Let's start, though, with a day of unprecedented action from the Premier League, who have charged Manchester City with over 100 breaches of its financial fair play rules. The Premier League champions say they're surprised and insist they're innocent. The case has been referred to an independent commission to decide any potential punishment. Well, according to the Premier League, Manchester City allegedly broke the rules over 9 seasons. It's claimed they didn't provide accurate financial information. During those 9 seasons, City won the Premier League title 3 times. Well, here's a breakdown of exactly what City are accused of. It's more than 100 breaches of financial fair play rules between 2009 and 2018. 8 charges relate to the terms and content of the former manager Roberto Mancini's contract. The Premier League alleges that City failed to show the full amount that he was paid. 12 charges relate to player contracts and the full amounts not being included between 2009 and 2013. The Premier League has levelled 5 other charges, alleging that every year from 2013 to 2018, City failed to comply with UEFA rules, which include club licensing and financial fair play regulations. The Premier League has similar rules governing what clubs can spend, and they've charged City with 25 breaches of those rules between 2015 and 2018. The final 30 charges go from 2018 right up to the current season and allege that by failing to supply documents in good faith, i.e. accurately and on time, City didn't cooperate with or assist the league in its investigation. Well, our chief reporter, Kaveh Solhekol, right across this story and joins me now, as you can see. How did we get here?
Good question. It started off with a Portuguese hacker called Rui Pinto, who hacked into the emails of some of the biggest clubs in Europe and also some of the biggest football agents. The information that he stole, he gave to a German magazine called Der Spiegel. They did a series of articles called Football Leaks Investigations. And once these investigations were read and digested, a lot of people said, come on, look at all this evidence. UEFA has to do something. UEFA has to charge Man City with breaking their financial fair play rules. That is what UEFA did. Basically, Man City were found guilty. Then they went to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. They partially overturned some of UEFA's decisions, which meant, for instance, they were supposed to be banned from European competition for 2 seasons. That was overturned, but they were still fined 10 million euros, down from 30 million euros. At the same time, when people read what was in Der Spiegel, they said, hey, Premier League have got financial fair play rules as well. Why are the Premier League not investigating? The Premier League started investigating. They started investigating just over 4 years ago. In the background, there have been court cases where Manchester City have argued that the Premier League don't have the power to investigate these financial matters. But the Premier League have been pretty dogged, and we've got to the situation today, totally unprecedented and pretty extraordinary, a situation that a lot of people didn't think they would ever see, where the Premier League appears to be taking on one of the biggest, most powerful clubs, if not the biggest and the most powerful club in the Premier League at the moment.
As you said, this is unprecedented. Why only Manchester City?
Well, why only Manchester City? That is the evidence that's been presented to the Premier League. The Premier League would tell you that they have strict financial fair play rules, and if any other clubs break those rules, if they receive evidence that seems to show that they're breaking those rules, then the Premier League would take action against them as well. As far as UEFA is concerned, it hasn't just been Manchester City. Other clubs have been investigated, other clubs have been sanctioned and fined, including clubs like AC Milan and PSG as well. So it hasn't just been Manchester City.
Now, City have been faced with these questions before. The City chairman, Khaldoon Al-Mubarak, has spoken out against financial fair play concerns in the past. Actually, in an interview in 2019, he insisted that if the process is based solely on fact, City will prevail.
We are dealing with each one of these entities as per the process. We have clear answers. I believe quite comfortably. If the process is going to be judged on facts, then unquestionably we will prevail. If it's not about facts and it's about other things, then it's a different conversation.
So that was 2019. What have City had to say today? Well, let's go to the Etihad Stadium, join our reporter Vinny O'Connor and find out. So, Vinny, what have they said?
Officially, Mike, there's shock. Also behind the scenes, there's anger as well. In a statement this afternoon, Manchester City had this to say. Manchester City FC is surprised by the issuing of these alleged breaches of the Premier League rules, particularly given the extensive engagement and vast amount of detailed materials that the EPL has been provided with. The club welcomes the review of this matter by an independent commission to impartially consider the comprehensive body of irrefutable evidence that exists in support of its position. As such, we look forward to this matter being put to rest once and for all. Where the anger comes from, there's a couple of points to raise here. First of all, the timing, we understand, has been noted by those behind the scenes. In relation, that is, to the soon-to-be-released white paper on football governance and the prospect of an independent regulator coming into the sport. City believe in many ways they're being used as an example of the Premier League being able to keep its own house in order. On top of that, there's also unhappiness over allegations that over the way the news was delivered to Manchester City today. They believe that journalists were briefed before they were given the information, and also it's claimed that the news was delivered to Manchester City in a telephone call to their CEO, Ferran Soriano. And while that telephone call was taking place, that was when the news was made public. What Manchester City do welcome is the fact that there's no time bar. As Carve mentioned, the process that they went through as regards UEFA and the Court of Arbitration for Sport, that could only go back 5 years. The fact that this goes back to 2009, then Manchester City welcome the opportunity to prove their innocence across that timescale.
Vinny, for the moment, thank you very much. Carve, Vinny picked up on a couple of things that City have said. They talked about the white paper and how they feel it's a bit of a smokescreen, and also that journalists were briefed. Is that your understanding on both those?
Well, look, Vinny, you know, he has got excellent information. There are two sides to the story. My understanding, slightly different from Vinny's. I'm not contradicting what he's saying, but my information is that as far as the Premier League are concerned, we should not be reading anything into the timing of this coinciding with the possibility that the government are going to be releasing this white paper, which may well recommend the setting up of an independent football regulator. So my understanding of the situation is the two are totally unconnected. The timing of this is not something underhand by the Premier League to try and show off to the government, look, we're so powerful, we're taking action against Manchester City, we don't need an independent regulator. Although I can see why it could look like that.
OK, and were journalists briefed?
On the second point about the journalists being briefed, again, my understanding is that no journalists were briefed before the statement was published on the Premier League's website. And I'm not 100% sure. I think what happened is that the first people to report it were the Times newspaper website, and that is because somebody on their news desk saw it on the Premier League's website. So I am pretty sure no journalists were briefed. If they had been briefed, they would have been on social media straight away, because it would have been a great exclusive breaking story. But my understanding is the first time anybody knew about it was when it appeared on the Premier League's website. OK, let's just reiterate that as things stand, City have been found guilty of absolutely nothing. But if they are, we're going to talk possible punishments, Carve, and I'm going to throw some possible punishments at you and see what you think. Could City be fined? In the past, clubs have been fined for breaking financial fair play rules, both here and abroad. Queen's Park Rangers fined £50 million. They've had to pay nearly all that fine. It's affected them to this day, had a massive effect on the way the club is run. Would a financial penalty, if City were found guilty, really hurt them, or would it just be a slap on the wrist? A lot of people would say that Manchester City's owners are so rich that a fine of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million pounds wouldn't really have that much of an effect on them. So that would be maybe a best case scenario after, of course, being totally cleared.
OK, points deduction.
Again, we've seen points deductions be applied, especially in the EFL. It has happened on numerous occasions. I've seen people saying today, if there were points deductions, would they be historic points deductions? Would they go back, for instance, to 2009? Could we see the Premier League table being redrawn and trophies being taken away from Manchester City? Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but in the past, especially in England, that has not happened. There has been a real reluctance to get involved with changing results and changing league tables from the past. So if there was to be a points deduction, I think it would be much more likely to be applied in the season where the decision was made that Manchester City were guilty of breaking these rules.
OK, could they be expelled from the league?
Again, it's a possibility. If you look at the various options that the independent commission has, they can recommend to the Premier League board that a club are expelled from the league. If that was to happen, basically Manchester City would be relegated. Again, I think that is one of the worst case scenarios. I think it would be a very, very difficult decision for the Premier League board to take, to relegate one of their richest, more powerful members. But again, if you look at the rule book, it's on there. The independent commission have the power to recommend expulsion to the Premier League board.
One more for you. Could City suffer a transfer ban?
Again, that is possible. The Football Leaks investigation, the material that was published in Der Spiegel seemed to suggest that Manchester City had broken rules about approaching young players, something that Manchester City have denied. So again, if this was looked at by the Premier League and they decided that Manchester City had broken some of these rules, then they could be punished. The Premier League could say you're not allowed to register players, which would effectively mean that they were banned from making signings. I mean, going through all this is all hypothetical. You know, let's bear in mind, Manchester City, as you said, have not been found guilty of anything. They may well be totally cleared. We're just going through the possible outcomes if they are found guilty according to the Premier League's own rulebook.
How significant is it that there's no appeal process?
Well, there is an appeals process. I've got to make that clear. I think quickly I can go through what's going to happen next. What will happen next is that the Premier League board has referred the case to a man called Murray Rosen KC. Now, he is the chair of the Premier League judicial panel. What he will do now is establish a 3-person panel. He will choose 3 people to sit on this independent commission. And these 3 people will hear representations from the Premier League and also from Manchester City, in secret, in private. We don't know where it's going to be. We don't know how long it will take. Once they've heard the representations and come to their decision, that decision will be published on the Premier League's website. That's how we'll find out what the decision is. Now, there is an appeals process. Either side can appeal that decision. In that case, what would happen is Murray Rosen KC, again, he would get to work. He would establish a new 3-person panel made up of 3 different people, and they would hear the appeal. And once they'd heard the appeal, again, their decision would be published on the Premier League's website. Okay. What City would not be able to do, which is what they did in the UEFA case, is they went to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. They would not be able to do that.
OK.